I used to love running alone. Back in high school, I was on the cross country and track teams. I wasn't the fastest by any means, but man, did I have endurance. There was something kind of meditative about it. Just me, the road, and the steady rhythm of my footsteps. It helped me escape. So, when this woman in a quiet rural neighborhood hired me to run her hyperactive puppy Izzy, it felt like the perfect gig. She paid me $10 per run, and all I had to do was take the dog out and burn some miles. Easy money, right? The area where she lived was kind of eerie, to be honest. Lots of space between houses, abandoned farms here and there, even a cemetery nearby. And supposedly there were old buildings left behind from some weird cult that had disbanded years ago. My parents had always warned me not to run alone in secluded places like that, but I figured, come on, I'm fast. What's really gonna happen? Well, that confidence evaporated one evening, completely. It was just before dusk, and I decided to take Izzy out for a longer run. The sun was casting this deep orange glow over the treetops. It was beautiful in that haunting, end-of-the-world kind of way. But the shadows were stretching long across the road, making everything feel darker than it should have. Too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on you. We were about 2 miles in heading down a stretch of road with forest on both sides, dense, thick forest. That's when Izzy stopped, dead in her tracks. Her ears perked up, and she just stared into the trees. I swear she turned into a statue. Then this low whimper came out of her like something was wrong deep in her instincts. And my gut twisted instantly. I didn't see anything at first, just branches swaying slightly in the breeze. But then I saw him, a man's face, poking out from behind the tree. He was short, maybe in his 30s, wearing a hat pulled low over his eyes, a thick jacket, even though it wasn't cold, and gloves. His eyes were locked on me, not blinking, just watching. Something about the way he stood there half-hidden, unmoving, made my skin crawl. I told myself maybe he was just a hiker or a hunter. Nothing unusual, right? But he felt wrong, like he didn't belong there, like he didn't belong anywhere. Trying not to show I was rattled, I gave him a polite nod and started jogging again. My heart had definitely picked up speed, but not from the run. I didn't want to freak Izzy out, and I sure as hell didn't want to let this guy know I was scared. But I didn't get far before Izzy froze again. Her body went stiff, her tail between her legs. That's when I turned back and saw the guy had moved. He was no longer behind the tree. He was standing right at the tree line, just a few feet from the road, still staring, and this time his head was tilted like he was studying me. I felt ice slide down my spine. He wanted me to know he had moved. He wanted me to notice. I tried to stay calm. Maybe he was just some weirdo messing with me. Maybe if I ignored him, he'd get bored. I kept running, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds, hoping, praying he was gone. For a second, I thought he was. Then I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned. He was sprinting toward me, and he had a cleaver. I swear my brain just short-circuited. There was no logic, no hesitation, just terror. I didn't even scream. I couldn't. I just ran. Adrenaline hit me like a lightning strike. Izzy was jerking at the leash, trying to keep up. My breath came in ragged gasps. My legs felt like fire, but I did not stop, not for 1 second. And then I realized something even worse, something that still haunts me. I couldn't hear him breathing. I could hear my breath, Izzy's panting the wind, even the trees rustling, but not him. Just his heavy boots pounding the ground behind me. His pace matched mine, like he was locked onto me. But the silence under it all was unbearable. It was like chasing wasn't even effort for him. I glanced back once. His face was twisted in fury, his mouth slightly open, like he was growling. The gleam of that blade caught the last of the sunlight. But his arms, they flailed in these weird, unnatural motions, like he didn't know how to run properly. His legs were too fast, too aggressive, like something pretending to be human. I felt this deep, ancient kind of fear settle into my bones. The kind that says, if you stop, you die. I hit a neighborhood and tore through backyards, zigzagging between sheds and trees, trying to lose him. My lungs were about to collapse, and my vision was getting spotty. Finally, I ducked behind a shed, with Izzy pressing myself against the rough wooden wall. I could barely breathe. My whole body was trembling. Then I looked up the hill. He was there, standing, just watching. The cleaver hung limp in his hand. He didn't move. No rage anymore. Just blank, empty, like he'd lost interest or was waiting for something else. We locked eyes for a solid minute. Then headlights appeared in the distance, and just like that, he turned, walked back into the woods. No rush, no panic, just gone. I didn't move for what felt like forever. When I finally did, I took the longest, most cautious route back to the woman's house, sneaking through yards and avoiding every main road. When she handed me the money, I smiled like nothing had happened. My hands were shaking. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell my parents. I knew if I did, they'd never let me run alone again. And to be honest, I don't even know what I'd tell them. Was he some psycho drifter? Part of that old cult people whispered about? Something else? I don't know. But I do know this. I never ran in that direction again. The Forest Whispers. Ryan's Weekend of Terror. In April of 2022, Ryan took a construction job far from home. It was part of a 3-month placement that included lodging. And though the pay wasn't extraordinary, it was reliable. Something Ryan desperately needed. The chance to work alongside his longtime friend Jim sweetened the deal. They both figured a few months away from the chaos of everyday life could actually be refreshing. A few weeks into the job, Ryan settled into the routine. The work was tolerable, and the surroundings, while extremely remote, offered a kind of peace. The job site was buried deep in the countryside, where long winding roads stretched for miles without a single sign of civilization. It wasn't uncommon to go an hour without passing another house. While most of the workers spent their weekends drinking and partying, Ryan preferred solitude. He had always loved the outdoors. So, on a Friday evening, he packed his gear and decided to head into the woods for a quiet weekend of hiking and camping. Just 5 minutes from his accommodation was a narrow trailhead. Ryan entered the woods and walked for about 20 minutes until he was deep among the trees. The only sounds were the wind rustling the leaves and the crunch of his boots. He lit a joint, relaxed, and let the stress of daily life drift away with the smoke. Around 7 p.m., the light began to fade. Shadows stretched across the trail, and Ryan knew it was time to find a place to set up camp. That's when he noticed something unusual. The smell of burning wood. A faint layer of smoke hung in the air. He dismissed it at first, assuming there was another camper nearby. But then he spotted a flicker of orange light between the trees. He stepped off the trail to investigate. What he found was bizarre and unsettling. Dozens of rusted shopping carts were hanging from tree branches, tied up with rope. Some of them were twisted into grotesque shapes like a chaotic jungle gym of metal. It didn't look like a campsite. It looked like a shrine or maybe a warning. Ryan pulled out his phone and began taking pictures. No one would believe this otherwise. As he moved closer, he saw something even more disturbing. Above a fire which was still burning hot, hung a blackened old-fashioned duck ornament. Sitting inside it was a melted baby doll, its limbs deformed by heat. Bottles of water lay scattered around the area, suggesting someone had been there recently, maybe even still watching. His chest tightened. He considered turning back, but convinced himself it was probably just the work of an eccentric loner. Still, he kept checking over his shoulder. Eventually, He put some distance between himself and the sight, found a clearing, and set up his tent. He gathered firewood, lit a small campfire, and cooked a simple meal. Steak and potatoes wrapped in foil and buried in the embers. He smoked another joint to calm his nerves. With the fire crackling and his belly full, Ryan lay back and listened to a pre-downloaded playlist of true crime podcasts, stories of unsolved murders filled the silence of the forest. There was no signal, no distractions, just flickering firelight and cold voices recounting horror. He must have dozed off at some point, but then he woke up. The air inside his tent was colder. The fire outside had dimmed. He checked his phone. 4 a.m. Then he heard it whistling, a slow, drawn-out melody carrying through the trees around his camp. Ryan froze. His body refused to move. It was like his instincts locked him in place. Then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate crunching twigs and leaves as they moved around the tent. Ryan's heart pounded in his throat. Then, without warning, his body snapped into motion. He threw on his boots, burst out of the tent, and looked into the darkness. The most terrifying part, the sounds had come from the direction he entered. The way back to the trailhead was now blocked. He turned and ran deeper into the forest. Behind him, more footsteps joined the chase. They weren't in sync. The sounds overlapped too many to be just one person. Ryan sprinted blindly, pushing past branches and stumbling over roots. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. Eventually, he dove into a dense patch of underbrush, burying himself in dead leaves and roots. He lay there, motionless, barely breathing. The footsteps faded. He waited, then slowly crawled out, taking great care with every step. Branches tore at his arms and legs as he made his way through the dark. Finally, he saw a thinning of the trees. The trailhead. He ran, not stopping, until he was out of the woods. Back at his housing, Ryan immediately reported what had happened. The police took his statement and promised to investigate, but he never heard anything more. To this day, Ryan believes the people who chased him were the same ones who built that horrifying display in the woods. What they were doing, what they wanted, he doesn't know. But to him, it felt like something more than just a creepy coincidence. It felt ritualistic. And if he hadn't trusted his instincts and run, he's convinced he might not have lived to tell the story. The tunnel beneath the creek. It began as a dare. Beck, Matthew, and Tyler, 3 high school friends, had always joked about the massive sewer tunnel near the edge of their neighborhood, hidden beneath a narrow creek and tucked beside abandoned office buildings. The tunnel loomed like a forgotten mouth in the earth, cold and silent. It was a bitter winter night when curiosity finally overpowered their hesitation. Armed with flashlights and a couple of sleds as an excuse, just in case someone questioned them, the boys made their way to the parking lot near the building. As soon as they arrived, a police cruiser rolled in. Someone had seen them on a security camera. Thinking quickly, Tyler told the officer they were just planning to sled. The cop eyed them unconvinced, but eventually waved them off. They left, but only briefly. After 30 minutes of driving around, they returned and parked further away out of view. They hiked quietly down a slope behind the buildings, their breath visible in the freezing air. The entrance of the tunnel stood tall and round like an open maw, swallowing darkness. Graffiti lined the walls, most of it old and faded, except one marking stood out, a date spray-painted in fresh red numbers. 6/19. It looked recent, too recent. Flashlights in hand, they stepped into the tunnel. The interior was dry and eerily still, save for the occasional echo of dripping water. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Icicles hung like knives from the ceiling, and frost crept along the walls. Their lights struggled to cut through the thick blackness ahead. Then came the sound of sharp crack, like something heavy slamming against stone. It echoed from deep within the tunnel. It wasn't any of them, and it was too far to see what caused it. Panic took over. They bolted. In the chaos, Beck dropped his phone. Outside, gasping for breath and shivering from the cold and adrenaline, Beck insisted on going back. Matthew and Tyler pleaded with him to leave it, but Beck wouldn't let it go. He grabbed a flashlight and headed back toward the tunnel. Reluctantly, the others followed. Something had changed. The tunnel felt heavier, the silence more oppressive. Their lights dimmed unnaturally. Each step forward filled them with dread, like they were being watched by something just beyond their vision. Somewhere, off camera, Beck retrieved his phone. They turned to leave. That's when it came a scream. Distant, but sharp and unmistakably human. It echoed through the tunnel, bouncing off the curved walls. They didn't wait. They ran harder, faster than before. No words, no glances back, just sheer instinctive flight. Only once they reached their car did they breathe again. The drive home was silent. They didn't speak. They didn't need to, but it wasn't over. Later that night, Beck's doorbell rang twice in the dead of night. His father answered the door, but no one was there. No tracks in the snow. No sign of life. It raised a haunting question. Had something followed them? Or was it just a random prank at the worst possible time? The boys never got a clear answer, but all of them remembered the sounds, the crack, the scream, and the video footage they captured that night. Whatever they stumbled upon in that tunnel, it wasn't meant to be found.